This is the IBJ podcast for the week of Monday, August the 12th, 2024, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I'm not going to go out on a limb with this observation, but I'll say it anyway. The most significant real estate development in central Indiana from the last 15 years was the JW Marriott Indianapolis, which opened in February 2011. With more than 1,000 rooms over 34 glass-encased floors, it instantly became the tallest and largest hotel in central Indiana. It also played an outsized role in the city's strategy to attract more convention and event business. You'll recall that Lucas Oil Stadium was completed in 2008. The new Indianapolis International Airport terminal debuted in 2008. Also in 2008, the Indiana Convention Center started a major expansion, which was completed in 2011. With the JW Marriott added to the mix, the city could go a long way to realizing its ambitions of hosting a larger variety of meetings and prominent events. It remains the Big Kahuna of downtown hotels, while also serving as the city's largest billboard, a canvas for 100-foot graphics commemorating special events. Phil Ray has been general manager of the JW Marriott for the last decade and had leadership roles in other major local hotels going back to 2003. He has a 34-story perspective on how the city's status as a convention and tourism destination has evolved, as well as the latest efforts to attract more convention business. We have a wide-ranging discussion for the podcast this week as he provides his take on topics such as the new taxing district the city is considering for beautification and public safety efforts downtown, and the city-funded construction of an 800-room hotel that would become the JW Marriott's biggest competitor. We also discuss how the JW Marriott weathered the first year of the pandemic and then became a key player in the audacious effort in 2021 to host all of March Madness in the Indianapolis area. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Phil Ray, Vice President and General Manager of the JW Marriott Indianapolis Hotel in downtown Indianapolis. Thanks for meeting me in the podcast studio.
It's my pleasure. It's great to be here.
So when we were scheduling the interview, you were on vacation. Is that right?
Yes, I was.
And you very generously were replying to the emails while you were on vacation. I appreciate that. It occurred to me, where does the general manager of the largest and perhaps most upscale hotel in Indiana go on vacation?
Actually, I got a chance to go back and play golf with a college buddy, and I've been doing it probably for like 25 plus years, where we do a 3-day member guest, and it's always on my calendar, and I always head back and play with him and get a chance to take 3 days and just him and I play golf with a bunch of other guys, and it's a blast. So that's back in Massachusetts, Ipswich Country Club.
So you stay at the country club? Is that a possibility?
No, I would stay right at his house, and so he's a member there. He's been a member there for like 30 years or so.
I'm going to assume that when you travel, like you could stay at a Marriott property.
Oh, I love to stay at a Marriott property. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we got 30 brands, which is pretty awesome. So there's always a place to stay.
Is that necessarily what you want to do? Is it instructive maybe to see what other hotels are doing as a guest?
You can't help it as you go into a property to always check things out. But I love it. And I love to be able to look at all the different brands and see the experiences they create for their guests. And each one's a little bit different, each brand. So anytime I get to go to another property, I always enjoy doing it. And it doesn't drive me crazy. And actually, my wife and kids are, they get to enjoy it too. They enjoy the hotel experience, and they often will critique not only my hotel, but any hotel we go to.
Oh, wait a second. They're critiquing your hotel?
Oh, for sure.
You're kidding me.
Oh, no. They're so observant. They've been growing up with me in my career, so they've seen it all. So they can tell things that are going well, but if there's opportunities
What do they notice when they go to the JW?
They just will notice what could be everything from just the way or the sonography of a hotel, how it feels or smells or looks, to what the service experience was, or the quality of the food. Or if there's my daughter will even catch if there's a misspelling on the menu. She's the first one to let me know.
Oh, for real. Okay, fair enough. Real quick trivia about the JW Marriott. I may call it JW.
That's
which is what we call it around here. How tall?
It's 33 guest floors. It's actually 34 stories because the top floor is mechanicals, but 33 floors, which is ironic because we have 33 cars at the Indy 500. So yeah, 33 floors. Yeah.
So 34 floors total. How many guest rooms?
So it's 1,013. And then Marriott Indy Place, which is the 5 hotels, which is the Marriott, the JW, the Courtyard, the Spring Hill, and the Fairfield, is 2,284 guest rooms.
The whole complex.
That's the whole complex.
Right. And the other hotels are around.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
JW
And that's
Marriott.
the way we sell it now as Marriott Indy Place. We get a lot of synergies from working together as a complex.
How many people work at the JW Marriott?
It's approximately 1,000 people that are working in the whole complex. So the JW's probably got like 600 plus that are working with us. And then the other hotels have another 400.
How much indoor exhibit, banquet, and or meeting space is in the JW Marriott?
JW is, so we are 100,000, 103,000, and then the Marriott's got another 50,000. So we say kind of 150,000 square feet of space between the complex, but we're, just over 100,000.
Are you general manager of the entire complex?
We actually do what we call shared services. So we have one sales team, one event management team, engineering, HR, accounting does multiple properties. So when they all report up to me, there's a GM that's at each of the locations. So there's one at the Marriott, there's one at the Courtyard in Spring Hill together, and then one in the Fairfield. So we all work together as a leadership team.
The GMs of the other hotels would report to you.
Technically, no, they report to an RVP, but all the sales team and all the other support we call shared services technically report up through me. But we work in conjunction together. We work really well together.
Not to get super complicated,
Sure.
But I did want to explain something about hotels and the JW Marriott that most people who aren't in the real estate industry probably don't get. So the JW Marriott is not owned by what we call Marriott International, the hotel company.
That's correct.
Who owns the
So
hotel?
we're owned by White Lodging. So the JW is actually owned by White Lodging. So the White family owns the JW.
Right, and they're based in Maryville, Indiana.
Indiana.
It's one of the largest privately owned hospitality companies in the world.
Bruce White started with one hotel back in 1985. So the White Lodging, the management company, manages all 5 of the hotels. And we actually own the Marriott, the JW, and the Fairfield. The Courtyard Spring Hill is actually a different ownership, which is Summit owns those 2 hotels. So we're actually a franchisee for Marriott, and we pay fees to them to be able to run. But we're the management company.
That's super interesting to me. So I guess what we call it is a flag.
JW is the flag.
So you pay a franchising fee to Marriott to take on that identity.
Not only do we get to use their brand, and we have standards that we have to follow to make sure they actually will come in and audit us to make sure we're following the brand standards properly. But we also get all the support from their global sales team, all their corporate systems. So we work very closely with the Marriott on the brand side to support our properties.
But White Lodging owns and operates.
Correct.
So I did a little bit of internet snooping. That's what I do here at IBJ. According to your LinkedIn profile, you are from Maine.
Yes, correct.
And grew up in Maine?
Grew up in a little town, Cape Elizabeth, Maine, just outside of Portland.
What is that like?
It was great, man. It was a great school experience. High school's a small community, so you grew up with the same group of kids growing up. We happened to be lucky enough to have great sports town. I won a couple state championships in baseball, and I had 3 brothers that I grew up with, so we all played sports, and had just a great community to grow up in. And that's where my parents met and grew up. So it was a pretty awesome experience to grow up in Cape Elizabeth. And Portland's a wonderful, small secondary city, and people are very friendly there. So
Portland, Maine. Yeah.
Portland, Maine, yes. Yeah. So I feel very fortunate to have grown up there.
And you graduated from Bentley University, I think you mentioned, in Massachusetts, I guess right outside of Boston.
Correct.
I gather it's a business college, essentially.
Yeah, it's a highly regarded accounting. It was started as an accounting school, but it's a business school, very strong private business school. It's kind of division sports is like a Division II school. Very well known on the East Coast, but out here in Midwest, I don't necessarily know it as well. But it was a great school, and I was an accounting major. And back in the day, I thought it was going to be, Big 8 accounting. I thought that was going to be my path, and graduating with an accounting degree. And I just kind of stumbled into Marriott. A fraternity brother, I dropped my resume in the box. I got an interview, and a fraternity brother actually told me all about Marriott and the possible career opportunity, and just kind of stumbled into the hotel business. And kind of the rest is history.
Pretty much right out of college.
Right out of college, yeah. So I started the summer right after college and trained at Boston Marriott Long Wharf.
So you've been in the Indianapolis market since 2003. when you became general manager of the Omni Hotel. And we were actually talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Tell me that story. How did you end up there?
I've been in the industry for 39 years, and I was working at the Omni Berkshire in New York City, Midtown, and I came out here for a 30-day assignment, and it was because the general manager had turned over. So I came out here just to be able to hold the fort down for the 30 days, and long story short, after 30 days, they ended up offering me the job to stay in Indy, and we ended up buying a house, and I've been here for now 20 years, which is amazing. Incredible. So the 30-day assignment has turned into 20 years.
Any kind of noticeable cultural shift going from the East Coast to
Well, it's
Midwest?
funny, when I first got the opportunity to come to Indianapolis, when I told people back in New York, they were like, well, what happened? Well, why are you going there?
Why are you being punished?
And I'm like, oh, you have no idea what a great city it is. I'm a big sports fan, and Indianapolis there's not a better sports city in America, in my opinion. And the city itself is great. It's a big, small city. So I love the fact that I get to know everybody. Our industry is big here in the city. People are so friendly, and it's been very welcoming. And growing up in Maine, it really felt just natural and a natural fit. So very fortunate that I was able to have my kids grow up here and be able to go to college down at IU Bloomington. And it's been pretty awesome.
So you were general manager of the Indianapolis Marriott downtown, which is separate from the JW, from 2010 to 2014, and then became general manager of the JW Marriott in Indianapolis, which had opened in 2011.
Correct.
Okay, got that right. So with 22, 23 years of perspective on downtown Indianapolis, how would you say the core convention, tourism, and hospitality market, which is one of the primary engines really of downtown Indianapolis, how has that changed?
It really has continued to evolve. I mean, USA Today has us as the number one convention city in America, right? But really, group is what we do. We are now the most group-dependent city in the whole country. So it means we require group business is what really drives us. For our hotel, 2/3 of our business comes from group. So it's really, really important not only that we get that group business, but we really do it well so we can get them to want to come back to our city.
When you say group, I mean, I interpret that as conventions.
Group and conventions, correct.
Gen Con. It's not a group like family reunions.
Well, it could be anything. A group is anything that's 10 rooms or more that come together for a purpose. So 10 rooms or more. So we have anything from a group that's self-contained group at the hotel. It could be within Marriott Indy Place, which is our 5 hotels, or it could be the entire city, like a Gen Con. That's a citywide convention that takes over most of the downtown and even into the suburbs at times. So group business is really, really important. And as those groups and conventions continue to come back and grow over the last 20 years, we've added hotels. We've, gotten better and better. We expanded the convention center, and I was involved in part of that when we actually supported raising taxes to be able to allow us to be able to build and expand the convention center when we tore down the RCA Dome, added Lucas Oil Stadium, expanded the airport terminal. That was a big next step that allowed the JW to come into the marketplace. And the city's only gotten bigger and better as a convention city.
Has it become more sophisticated as a host of big events?
Yeah, I think so. I think we do events better than anybody else in the country. Most people kind of have heard that, but our reputation when we talk to people, they love coming to Indianapolis. And probably our secret sauce is the people that give the Midwest is best, that Hoosier hospitality experience. But on top of that, we work together as a city and collaborate better than anybody else around the country. And I've been in a number of different cities over my career. And how we work together with Visit Indy, the convention center, the sports corp, the downtown police, all the restaurants and all the attractions. Everybody is working for the common good in Indianapolis. And for us to be the best, we have to do that to be able to make our city win. And there's a culture that's in place here in Indianapolis that's better than anywhere else, where we want to make Indianapolis win first. And if Indianapolis wins, then we're all going to win as business entities.
Is it fair enough to say that Indianapolis is small enough, to have that kind of culture? Is that culture imaginable like in a New York City?
They all try to be able to work together, but their own individual egos and businesses, and they're all fighting for themselves more. And here it's like a little bit of the Midwest, just their culture and values, that we want to make sure people work together. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Republican mayor or a Democratic mayor. The common good is how do we make Indianapolis win? And how do we make it a great place to eat, work, and play?
Let's take a quick break so we can hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ podcast and my conversation with Phil Ray about managing the JW Marriott Indianapolis, the largest convention hotel in central Indiana and a key piece of the city's hospitality ecosystem. So what was the experience of running a 1,000-room hotel during the first year of the pandemic?
I'm glad I'm still here to talk about it. Let's start there. That was probably the most crazy experience. There was no textbook. There was no experiences to follow. And we were kind of just learning as we went. And I feel very fortunate that I was here in Indianapolis to do that because, again, going back to some of the things that make us successful as a city, that also helped us be able to recover faster. We were able to flex and do that. But it was very painful. Virtually seeing, we've got business on the books now for 2035. People can book that far out for the big conventions and typically 3 or 4 years out. So there are groups that we were contracted that were canceling like millions of dollars of business that were canceling on us that we had worked years to be able to earn their business to get them to come to Indianapolis. And within a matter of that first 2 weeks, we were just seeing business cancel like crazy. We always collaborate. And when we look at a customer, we look at a customer for life. So we really worked hard. Like even if we were trying to negotiate with them to be able to get some cash because we needed to get some money from a contract to be able to survive the business. But at the same time, we flexed to be able to rebook them to get them to come back, which in hindsight now was actually brilliant because that allowed us to recover much faster than most other cities. So by negotiating with them and saying, hey, we'll take some of the penalty, but if you come back, we'll absorb some of that penalty, what you owe us now, in hopes that you bring that business back in the future. And that worked out really well. But we went from 1,000 associates down to like 35 associates.
Oh, in the whole complex?
The whole complex. The JW was closed for 109 days. And so then we finally got to reopen, and we reopened. It was a staged recovery. So we virtually opened up with Starbucks. That was my only restaurant for the breakfast and lunch. And then we had High Velocity that was open for dinner. And that was it to start. And then slowly over time, we started to rebuild the business as people came back.
And that was early July when you guys opened.
Correct. Yeah. July 9th.
And I think you told us at the time, like you expected to have like 40% occupancy that weekend. Is that basically what happened? Yeah.
So we, Bex Hybrid is a company that has been great, just a great partner for us for a long time, great customer. And they wanted to meet. And they were the first group that was able to say, hey, we will figure this out together. And we were working on how do we open safely and operate safely. And they were the ones that they said, we will come meet. And that allowed us to have the confidence to be able to reopen. So we did reopen with them. And then we relied on all the sports teams. So we had volleyball and basketball, the convention center. We were doing all sports. And then eventually college sports started to come back, and then professional sports. And those were the things. So we would be very busy like on the weekend. And then we'd have all week to catch up and clean all the rooms and get ready so we could then do it again. And we were so happy to be able to do that. And then as business eventually came back, we were able to then start to get business to slowly kind of ramp up back. But it took a long time.
I mean, you mentioned like cleaning rooms. I mean, that's no joke. I mean, you had to, as I recall, you had to change the way, and it really significantly increased the amount of time that you spent cleaning rooms.
Correct. There was extra steps to make sure it was being cleaned and sanitized properly. There was a whole new operating set of procedures that we were taking information from Marriott Corporation, from the hotel associations around the country. We were taking any information that we could get to try to make sure we could operate safely, because we knew if we had any issues, it was going to be devastating. We would probably never be able to be successful for a long, long time. So we made sure that we could not only operate, but we could operate safely and be able to take care of our guests again.
That was a crazy time for everybody, obviously. It just sounds heartbreaking to have 1,000 employees and have to tell 99% of them, you need to go home, and I can't tell you when we're coming back.
It was such a painful process, but we would have weekly calls with our staff because remember back then we were flattening the curve. That was the initial thing. And we kept doing business models and we're like, it's only going to be 30 days. And so we would have weekly phone calls just to try and keep the staff on, and we were furloughing our staff. And so we would talk to them every week. And there was like little pieces of information and trying to keep them hopeful they were going to come back. And then ultimately we ended up having to let people go because we just couldn't do it. So the great thing was our culture was so strong that when we did start to reopen, people were so excited to come back. And we ultimately, probably about 70% of our staff of that 1,000, probably like 600-700 of them actually came back to work for us. I mean, some of them right away, some of them as business got stabilized, they then came back to work for us. And so still had to hire a lot of new people, but the core group really came back, which makes me feel really good that they felt strong enough they want to get back to our industry that they love.
And you had already been working on a renovation of the JW Marriott, is that right?
That is correct.
So that continued.
Yes. In some ways, that was one of the silver linings. We had already done our meeting space renovation. We expanded our Starbucks, and we were about a third of the way through on our guest room renovations. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit. So virtually everything stopped and there was no business. The good news was we had already purchased all the materials for that renovation, so we were able to just keep going and keep that going.
That's so key. So you had the materials.
We had the materials, and that was key. But I individually and the core of 35 people, we were running water, turning on water to keep the water running in the building. We were our security. We were just doing everything to be able to just keep the building operating while this renovation was still going on. And that was a silver lining. We took advantage of the hotel being closed to be able to get all that stuff done.
Fairly significant renovation.
Yeah, it was huge. It was guest rooms plus, we call it. So it was, carpet, wall covering, all that, but also lamps and soft chairs. And we took all of our tubs away for the double queen rooms. We actually took out the tubs and converted those showers. So we there's a lot that is accomplished. The hotel, here it is 13 years later, and it still looks fabulous.
That renovation, would have taken place, roughly 10 years after you first opened.
Yes.
And is it unusual or usual that a hotel would sort of refreshen most of its main features in a decade?
Hotels try to target like seven years or so. Every 7 years, you do a soft goods renovation. But we really focus on taking care of the property and doing all the things to maintain it. So if we can stretch that out to 8 or 9 years, then over the course of a life of a property, you'll skip a renovation cycle, which will save you ultimately millions of dollars. So we really work hard to maintain the property, take care of it so it's in great shape.
So in spring then of the next year, 2021, the JW Marriott becomes a key part of the Indiana Sports Corporation's strategy to stage nearly all of March Madness, the NCAA men's basketball tournament in Indianapolis with precautions in place. Remind us of the role that the JW played in that strategy. 68 teams. 68 teams. Come into town.
And I can remember getting a phone call, and this was Thanksgiving time, maybe November, December timeframe. There was a very small amount of people that knew, and they were asking us whether we could help make this happen. And so we had myself and Leonard Hoops and some others. We were running different models and working with the NCAA to say, can we even do this? And we had to relocate one major convention that was able to shift dates to do that for the convention center. Yeah, and so we were happy to figure it out. But the NCAA came to us and said, failure is not an option, because if they didn't have that tournament, for them to be able to continue on was financially going to be, it would have been devastating to them.
Yeah, right. By far the majority of their revenue comes from that tournament.
Correct. Exactly. So we had a big challenge ahead of us, and normally you would have a lot of times. Now, we were supposed to have the Final Four that year, and of course the headquarters, and we've done so many that we were a natural fit. But again, how Indianapolis collaborates, we had the games going from Purdue down to Bloomington and the Fairgrounds and Butler University and, of course, Lucas Oil and Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And so, so they looked to us and we could do it. So we hosted 48 of the 68 teams stayed between the Marriott and the JW. So each team had their own floor, and then each team had a meeting room that was where they would have their meals and where they would have their meetings. And there were students, and so they would come and first they would arrive. We planned, and they actually arrived and would have to isolate for the first 32, 36 hours and test negative before they could then even roam the hotel. So we had to do knock and drop deliveries. We couldn't cross paths with the guest, which is kind of crazy.
That's what I remember. You had to time when teams would be shuffle around.
Yes, you had to manage because they couldn't cross paths with each other. So the team would, for them, they wanted to stay healthy. And for us, we want to make sure they stayed healthy. So once they got through the isolation, they would go through the meeting rooms and we worked with the NCAA to come up with menus, and we had to give them a choice on food. And that first Sunday was the craziest thing ever because they announced on Sunday the teams, and they started arriving Sunday night. We didn't know which teams were coming. We didn't know who was coming. So it was controlled chaos as they were first coming to the hotels. And funny, by the time we got to the actual Final Four, that was the easy part, which typically is the biggest event ever, right? So it was a unique experience, and fortunately, everything worked out really, really well. And it's one of the things I'm probably most proud that we were able to help make that happen, and that helped give the city confidence and help really give the country confidence that it was okay to meet and do these big events again.
The thing that I remember is the laundry, which was an incredible endeavor that. People, I don't know how quickly you guys anticipated it, but it's sort of the last thing that you think about, how do you put up these guys? How did the laundry work?
So the Sports Corp, they came up with so many creative ideas to be able to make all this work and with all the different committees they had, but they actually had a centralized laundry that they would take team uniforms and all the stuff they had to wash, and they would go down and they would actually have laundry hours. They had volunteers that would do the laundry for them, clean it, and then send it back to the teams. And there was so much just the scheduling and the planning to be able to make all that stuff happen was pretty incredible.
It seemed like they'd have a giant hamper.
Yeah,
and they put the stuff in a giant hamper.
Yeah, and
then someone's got to dig it down to the laundry.
So, and even the guest rooms, we couldn't go in and do traditional housekeeping because we couldn't interact.
Oh, right.
So,
and that's right, because they're not leaving.
Yeah, so we actually had all the towels and all the extra laundry. They would be able to self-serve themselves at the elevator landings. They would then leave their dirty stuff out, at which we would go grab that at a certain time and clean it, and then be able to replenish so they could clean their own rooms and take out their trash. And they'd deliver food at the middle of the night at 11 o'clock at night. All of a sudden, we'd have thousands of pizza boxes showing up for, Pizza Hut, that was one of the sponsors, being able to deliver pizza. So there was so many unique things that happened.
So you'd have for the restaurants that were open, and many actually were doing delivery at the time, you would be receiving dozens and dozens of food delivery orders.
Correct.
At the front door of the JW.
Absolutely. And the deliveries, they couldn't come into the hotel because we were bubbled, so they would leave it. We'd pick it up at the lobby, and then they would ultimately get delivered. So, yeah, it was crazy, and they loved their ice cream sundaes. The teams all loved that, and it was and we would be taking their menu options and making it all happen.
Was there ever any point early on in the planning for this where you could have said, "I don't think this is going to work"?
There was a lot of give and take working with the NCAA, what they were trying to accomplish, and they have to make sure it's fair and consistent, and so no matter which hotel, the food was the same and the consistency was there, so no team had an advantage. So we had to work with them. But at one point, I remember that they wanted to have omelets for the breakfast, and I had 48 teams, and I'm like, you just do the math. There's no way we can execute this. And so we'd go back and forth trying to do it. But there was a lot of those type things that we'd have to say, hey, how can we do this? How do we not make this happen? And to be able to give them a quality food product. And some of the teams, remember that we went out, we had the Big Ten basketball happen before, then the March Madness. So there were some people that stayed almost a month in our hotel during the course of Big Ten, leading into the March Madness, all the way to the Final Four.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So the people that were isolated in a bubbled environment for 3 to 4 weeks.
Has business returned to pre-pandemic levels for you guys?
For us, we've gotten back. And in 2022, we had the college football championship. And that year, things were still rocky. As we reopened one of our restaurants, and our entire kitchen staff got COVID. So we ended up having to close the restaurant. At one point, I lost my front desk team to COVID, and my housekeeping team had all been cross-trained in the front office, so we were able to continue to operate. So it was very choppy in 22, but then the back half of 22, groups started to come back. We're very fortunate that the groups wanted to still meet, and the associations, which is a big part of our business, has to meet. So we recovered faster than most cities because of that. And so, and of course, we're the headquarters for most of the big associations that come in. So our hotel recovered really quickly the back half of 22, and then 23 was strong. And then this year has been a great year.
Can you quantify that at all? Occupancy usually is a metric, right?
Yes, sure. Occupancy. We focus on occupancy, overall sales, but occupancy. So we're now back at pre-pandemic levels for us. The downtown is still ramping back up. So the JW has recovered maybe a little faster because we are so dependent on groups. So we probably bounce back a little faster than some of the other hotels downtown, but they're on their way back as well. And this year has been strong as we look across all the properties downtown. We're seeing them getting back to kind of pre-pandemic levels. Yeah.
Folks who don't cover the real estate industry, in hotels, like 75% occupancy is amazing. It's not like full. There really never is like full occupancy, but to have 75% occupancy over a period of time is excellent. Where are you guys?
We're bumping up right against that 75%. So we'll be like between 74 and 75% this year. But like you said, in the month of June, we had the eclipse. We've had a bunch of different special events this year, but the month of June, we had a lot of different things going on, including USA Swimming. And we were like at a 90% occupancy for that month.
Oh, wow.
But there's other months, Christmas time and, because of groups aren't going to meet during the holidays. So when it all nets out to get to 74, 75% is extremely busy.
So in a normal year, what is the biggest challenge that you face?
The operations side, we really focus on making sure our groups are extremely happy. So staffing wise, for a while, as we came out of the pandemic, that was the biggest thing. We were virtually doing job fairs every week, twice a month, to be able to then just keep us getting enough staff to be able to take care of the businesses that came back. We're back to more normal there. So our staffing's always a key. For our industry is always key to make sure we're fully staffed and that people are happy in their jobs and want to stay. And then it's a matter of executing for the business. Every group's different. You've got Gen Con one week, you've got firefighters the next, you've got the Eclipse, you've got USA Swimming. So as all these different conventions come to town, we want to make sure that we're making it special for them, that we're executing at a high level for them, giving them a great product.
Just take Gen Con and the firefighters. Are there things that you would do to, personalize is the best way, but to make it unique for the Gen Conners versus a group like the firefighters?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So for the Gen Conners, for example, we know that they sleep very little while they're here. So we'll extend hours. We'll make sure that we've got lots of tables set up so they got places to set up their games to be able to play. We've got a lot of years of experience. So we are always critiquing and doing post-convention critiques to be able to look at what happened, what went well, how did the group perform. We talk to their leadership. We're always looking to say, what can we do to make it better? And we do it at the hotel level. Visit Indy does it for the city. All the restaurants downtown, we're always looking to say, how do we make it a special experience so they want to come back? And that goes for all the events too. That's like, NCAA loves doing their Final Fours in Indy because we are always trying to raise the bar to make it better. Super Bowl, we want to make the best Super Bowl ever, which most people will say we did that. So then these events say, hey, we're going to take what we learned in Indy and say, how do we take that to wherever we go around the country? So our challenge is always to try to raise the bar a little more, never take our business for granted, and make it better.
What can you say about the firefighters? What are those guys?
Oh, the firefighters, great. My brother was a firefighter, and he's been out to the conference back in years past. So they're another one of the nicest groups that we have. Gen Con is one of the favorites. Firefighters, they're great people. They like to eat. They like to drink. They like to socialize. They have fun with our staff. So our staff gets very excited about having them come every year.
The JW is one of the most distinctive elements on the Indianapolis skyline. And that's in part because it is so big. I always liken it to, it looks like kind of the bouncer for like the rest of the skyline. And it has a kind of a crescent shape. It's very tall. It's kind of like a monolith. The exterior is essentially glass, which at least in the Indianapolis area is unusual. How does that complicate your life?
It doesn't really complicate it. And there's a little funny story about how the JW became the JW. Bruce White's dad is Dean White. Dean White was in the billboard business. That was one of his key businesses, how he was very successful in the billboard business. Holiday Inn was one of his major clients when they used to advertise on roadsides for hotels. Long story short, he helped personally finance back when the JW was a hole in the ground. We had a financial crisis back then. The only way for that to happen was Bruce White's dad actually helped financially back the property to make that happen because financing wasn't available. So when they came to be able to present what the design was going to be, it was going to be more of a vanilla box the way the Marriott is, kind of a traditional hotel. And Dean White said, no, I want this to be a special property. So they came in with 4 other designs, and the one that we picked had the curves. And Bruce is like, that's going to cost millions of dollars more to be able to build with the curve and the all glass. And he goes, this is my legacy to leave to Indianapolis. I want to make sure we do it right. So Bruce had said, and they said, okay. And so they proceeded to do the design that we have now, which is not only the glass, but it's the curve, and makes it almost feel like a Las Vegas hotel as you're entering in from the airport to see it.
The scale is that big, yeah.
And of course, you've seen all the graphics that we put on the side of the building, which is kind of unique that it wasn't intended to be a billboard, but it ended up being a billboard for a lot of different things. The first one was the Super Bowl, and there's another little funny story. Initially, I guess I can share this, but Pepsi wanted to put up something on the JW when the Super Bowl was coming. And the NFL said, oh, no, we want to do this. They put up the Lombardi Trophy. So
Right.
that was the first graphic. And then the second one was the NCAA. We did the Final Four brackets. It was the biggest bracket in the world, Guinness Book of World Records. And
for folks who haven't seen this, I mean, the surface of the Marriott is sheer, it's glass, and you apply these giant, 100-foot graphics. To this day, I don't understand how you do it to the exterior, and it makes, a great first impression.
So Sports Graphics is a company that's here locally in Indianapolis that works with the NCAA and other companies, and they work nationally. And so we use them exclusively. And it's like a bus graphic, how you wrap a bus. And so you can still look out of the guest rooms, but it provides an amazing view from the outside.
That was my question. If I'm in one of these rooms that is in back of the bracket?
Yes, if you're looking out of Caitlin's face, right? Caitlin Clark's face.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it could be Caitlin Clark or Tyrese.
Yeah.
I can see outside.
You can.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. You can still. So it's just a tint. It's tinted almost like looking out a screen door. So you can still see out fine.
Got it.
It's just a shade darker, and it doesn't impact the guests negatively. So really no complaints from the guests on it. So we've had some fun over the years, and we typically do it major community events. So we're pretty exclusive on when we allow something like that to happen on the building. So we've done it for the Final Fours, Indy 500s, College Football Championship, the NBA All-Star Game. So we continue. When something goes on the building, we want the community to be excited about it.
Who pays for that? Is it the promoter of the event, or is it you guys?
Yeah, so we don't pay for it. Typically, we rent the space to be able to allow them to do it. So we work with Sports Graphics. They're the ones that produce it, and they will work with whoever the event is that wants to be able to do that and put it up on the building.
But the promoter of the event,
Correct.
Whoever's running the event, they pay to put that up there.
Correct.
So let's say that I wanted to.
But they are very happy. I always ask for them to make sure that it's underneath the JW Marriott. So that way the photo opportunities are very good. And Marriott Corporate's very happy with me when I do that.
So I've all wanted to put up a giant graphic to celebrate the 6th anniversary of the IBJ podcast. How much would that cost?
It'll cost a lot of money. It's not cheap, but it is obviously is very impactful. So
is it like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, it probably could, depending on the size, it could be up to $100,000 or more, depending on how big it is and how intricate it is. And Sports Graphics has gotten really good at doing it and doing it efficiently to make it so they can make it more affordable for those that want to do it.
I got a couple topical things.
Sure.
I'm going to talk about.
Absolutely.
About JW and its relationship with the city. So on August the 12th, which should be a little bit after this podcast first appears, the City County Council is going to vote on whether to approve a new taxing district that includes some downtown properties. And it's meant to help fund downtown cleanliness and beautification, public safety, and homelessness outreach. It also would pay costs related to a new homeless shelter with wraparound services on the south side of downtown. Hotels and office buildings are included in the taxing district. State lawmakers earlier this year carved out exceptions for apartments and single-family homes. Now, you have provided testimony in formal hearings for the city councilors about this tax, and that it will cost an estimated, I think, almost $350,000 a year on top of what you already would be paying. Is that still figure?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
And that would be a cost that White Lodging would shoulder.
Part of our real estate taxes, yes. Based on values, the real estate assessment values.
So where do you guys come down on this? Because I gathered you're not necessarily opposed to the tax, but rather how much of the burden rests on hotels?
Yeah, the intent of what they're trying to accomplish, we're very much supportive of them trying to make it a safer and more healthy downtown. So that's not the issue that we're looking at. That amount of tax, just to give you an idea, we'd have to do probably $1 million or more of sales just to pay for that new tax that's coming to us. Our feeling is just more, we would love to either have it be a little bit more equitable in how that is distributed throughout the downtown. Initially, we were outside the mile square, the JW. Now we got included. So we've got 4 new hotels that are now part of that. So it's a big tax burden to our ownerships who are just really starting to recover after going through the whole COVID. So it's just another burden that our ownership is having to absorb and to be able to deal with.
Is that a cost that you can manage?
Can we manage?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to have much choice, it looks like. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So, and ultimately we'll figure it out. And, owners still have to make their money and make their profits. So they're going to, at some point, that's going to translate into how do we become more profitable to be able to cover that new expense.
Now, most of the hotels that have opened recently downtown or that are in some stage of completion are relatively small, but upscale brands. Like, for example, the 139-room Bottle Works Hotel and the 90-room Hotel Indy were added in the last few years. The 170-room Intercontinental Hotel expected to open pretty close to the Circle this fall. So the well-heeled traveler seems to have more and more options. Do you look at those as a competitive threat, these smaller boutique-style hotels?
No, we're happy to see other hotels come in. What happens is the core, we call them the anchor hotels. There's 6 major hotels that are connected to the convention center that we rely to bring in these citywide conventions. These other brands, we like to make sure they still participate to be able to offer rooms up for these conventions where they come in versus just taking individual travelers. And when there's these compressed dates, they charge very, very high rates. Where we negotiate group rates to be able to attract the conventions, they kind of benefit when the downtown is compressed. So they benefit off when we're successful, they're benefiting at a high degree. So, but it's also great to have other brands to be able to offer to our guests that come to Indianapolis for all of our events. So it still makes our city better. And, we just would love to, again, see them contribute some rooms to the conventions that are coming, the more rooms we have downtown, the better to keep the big conventions coming in, or to be able to layer in multiple conventions, which I know with the Signia Hotel we may talk about, but that's as that comes to town.
Yeah, as you mentioned, what you'd say about 2/3 of your business is the groups.
Correct. Yep.
And so currently under construction on the former site of Pan Am Plaza is a 37-story, 800-room hotel that will operate as a Signia by Hilton. And that is expressly there for the reason, I believe, of capturing more groups. So that could increase the amount of convention business that we can bring to town. It's a very unusual deal in that the city of Indianapolis will finance and own the hotel, which city leaders say this is necessary in order to attract more and larger convention events to Indianapolis. It's expected to be complete by fall 2026. What is your take on how that is going to affect the market?
It's funny because people may think that the biggest thing for us is we want to make sure it's a level playing field, meaning we want them to be successful. We understand that as Indianapolis continues to evolve, adding more hotel rooms and more meeting space and the convention is actually good for everybody as long as they're set up for success and are successful. So what that means is we can retain some of the biggest conventions like a Gen Con, like the firefighters. A number of them came out saying we need more rooms downtown. So that's a good thing. We also will have a layering strategy where we're trying to get multiple conventions coming in, so they overlap with each other. Because typically a convention may be, you have a couple days to set up, you have 2 or 3 days, the convention happens, then a day to break it down and get out. If we have multiple conventions going on at the same week, while one's breaking down, one's actually got attendees, the downtown will stay actually busier. And so we will benefit, all of us will benefit if we can be successful in layering in so we have multiple conventions going on at once. So we want them to come in. We want them to be successful. It'll be obviously a direct competitor to us, another headquarter hotel, which is great. So we don't mind the competition. We think it's going to make Indianapolis better for the long term.
So you think that will work, that we will be able to layer, as you say, conventions, instead
Absolutely.
of having like, this is Gen Con weekend, and then next week is the Bands of America weekend, we would be able to book stuff, big conventions that overlap.
Correct. And that's probably, honestly, we'll probably have more of those mid-size conventions. There's a lot more of those. So the question is, can we just continue to overlap and get them to come to Indianapolis so we can have virtually two and so we'll have several more per month versus the one in, one out.
So yeah, when you're booking groups, do you find yourself sometimes saying, we'd love to have your group, but that's Gen Con weekend.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're a very busy city and the convention center is a very busy convention center. So the idea to be able to do this is going to allow us to be with this overlapping strategy will allow us to grow. And when we don't have convention center space, we're trying to do self-contained groups in our own hotel. We're big enough with our meeting space that we can do our own self-contained stuff. So we work really closely with a lot of experience over the last, the JW's been around 13 years. How do we layer in our own business? How do we take advantage of the citywide conventions? Many people don't realize a lot of times we will flex to be able to help bring in citywides where maybe we could be more successful on our own, but we do it for the good of the city and for all 5 of our hotels as well as the downtown. We will make decisions to participate in a convention, maybe not our first choice, but it's in the good for the community. So we always look at things from the holistic viewpoint to make the city successful.
When you say participate in a convention, is that use convention space for them?
That means rooms. So they'll come out and say, I need so many rooms for my block to be able to do my group at the convention center. And they'll look for several hotels to be able to participate and say at the JW, they may want like an NCAA Final Four. They'll say, I want 900 of your rooms to be able to bring this big event to town. And so we give up 90% of our inventory. We commit to that to be able to bring in that event. It's the same thing on smaller conventions, but they want X amount of rooms to be able to piece together their group. And so we have to participate to be able to make that group want to come to Indianapolis. And they want the JW part of their group. So we're a key component to be able to help that group decide to choose Indianapolis. So when I say, let's make Indy win first, that's what we're talking about. It's like we want that convention to come to Indianapolis. We want to have all these annual citywides that come year after year. So we know we have to do that, which helps us be successful, but it also helps the whole downtown to be successful.
I'm sorry, my small brain is trying to contain how this works. So my group, the Podcasters of America, I've got 500 rooms. And so I know we're going to meet at the convention center. I need someone who can hold us. And so do I just tell somebody at the city or Visit Indy, like, who can put us up?
So a lot of times if it's a citywide meeting, you're going to use multiple hotels. You would go through the Visit Indy team. Visit Indy team would then, they would go out to bid and say, I need whatever it is, 500 or 1,000 rooms in the community. And then we all get to bid. And then they will bring in the clients. The clients will decide which hotels they'd like to choose to be able to do that. And they take our bids that we provide to them, and then they make a decision on which hotels they'll utilize for that convention that's coming to town. Now, the big ones will use virtually everybody. The smaller ones could be on the north side, which would be like the JW, the Marriott, the Westin, and the Hyatt, where then you also have the South Campus, which you've got the Crown and you've got the Omni, and you got the Conrad and the Hilton on that side.
That's fascinating. So if I wanted everyone to be in the same hotel, that really kind of limits my choices.
Yeah, and if it's small enough, like at the JW, we could do up to 800 and 900 groups on peak. So if it's that size group, we could do that self-contained with just our space. And so we'll look at that. But if it's bigger than that and they need convention space, then they're going to look at multiple properties and they'll go through a bid process.
In the Signia, we'll have 800 some rooms, and that will be the largest hotel in the city, second only to JW. So really becomes your primary competitor, I would assume.
Yeah, so there'll be able to be another headquarter convention hotel because they typically like to have a headquarter that's where the big group of their central guests, some of their meetings will take place. And then the rest of the guests are staying in hotels and restaurants, kind of scatter around it. And that's why Indianapolis is so successful because it's so dense. There's so many hotels and so many brands that it's very walkable to all the different hotels.
The proposition of the Signia being owned by the city is controversial with some hoteliers because they think the Signia will have an unfair advantage, in part because it won't pay property taxes because it's owned by the city. They also worry that the city could try to undercut other convention hotels or funnel business to the Signia in order to make sure that the hotel is viable. Do you share those concerns or those
Well, the Signia team, as they're coming in the market, they've been great to work with. And, at the end of the day, Andy Mallon and the CIB, they need taxes. All of our taxes help support the CIB, which supports our stadiums and convention center, parking garages. So they need all of our hotels to be successful for them to be successful. So while they want the Signia to be successful and they have a different vested interest because it's an owned property now by the city, and they had to step up to do that. It was not going to happen without the city stepping in because they just couldn't get the financing. So we from a sideline saw that it was going to be difficult for them to finance it. So the fact that the city is stepping up to do that it makes it more unique. There's other cities. Atlanta has an example of doing that. Other city, Dallas has examples of doing that. So it's not that unique, but we want to make sure it's just a level playing field. And so there are some rules and the understanding and the agreements that have been set up to make sure that they're participating fairly and that they're not getting special treatment to try and make sure that it's equitable and fair. And they're participating in all the big citywides, and the space is actually a convention center expansion space that the Signia has rights to be able to utilize. So it's a little complex like that manner, but we're pretty confident it's going to work out fine.
Yeah, so you feel like you're confident of the firewalls that are set up to make sure that it's a fair competition.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to having great relationships with Visit Indy and then with the city and with our competitor hotels. We all work together very, very well, unlike most other cities. So we've been very they've been listening to our opinions and feedback and concerns, and they've been working together with us to collaborate to make it a great agreement. So we're cautiously optimistic that it's going to be great, and we honestly want them to be successful. We need them to be successful to make the rest of the market successful. So go Signia.
One last question. How long are you going to keep doing this?
How long am I going to keep doing it? I still love what I'm doing. So my hotel, I've got just an amazing, I've been here 20 years. So I've worked with a number of people. Our industry is an amazing industry, and I still love what I do. When I look around town, if you go right down the line, you've got the general manager at the Marriott, but at the Westin, at the Hyatt, at the Sheraton. I've all worked with all those general managers, worked with them in White Lodging. So they're like as much friends as they are competitors. I've got people that are working around the city that I've worked with here. My team at the JW, our executive committee, which is all our department heads or people that run each division of the property, so food and beverage and operations and sales and HR, we were together for 9 straight years. There was the most junior member was 9 years. So, which just does not happen in the hotel industry. So we have such a great team. We have a lot of fun. I've got great department heads. So the favorite part of my job is to see people build their careers and grow. And as we hire people, and, I just promoted somebody that I'd hired out of college at the Omni, who's now a GM, that's now going to be the general manager at the Courtyard Spring Hill Suites. And she came up through me from her career, starting right out of college and growed her career to become a general manager now at a 400 plus room property. So those are the things that make you really happy. So that part never changed. I love the fact we have groups that come in year out. That's a blast to see that. The clients become friends. I've got guests who've become friends. So I still love it. So I'll keep doing it for a while. And I still like to get away from the winter a little bit once in a while. So hopefully my boss lets me have a little bit of vacation time. But yes, I still enjoy it.
Well, great. Well, let's check in a little while and see how things are going.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, my gosh. It's my pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
My thanks again to Phil Ray. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few stories in the latest issue of IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, as you may have heard, the long-awaited extension of Interstate 69 from Evansville to Indianapolis is finally complete. Reporter Susan Orr explores the expected impact of the route on development in Marion and Johnson counties. Also in this week's issue, John Russell looks into the potential repercussions of a proposed 2.9% reduction in pay for physicians from Medicare. And Taylor Wooten explains how a new economic development tool could curb unwanted effects of gentrification in the Reagan Park neighborhood. Again, you can find these stories in the latest issue of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say it's quite a bit easier to access all the latest news and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business, community, and economy if you're a subscriber. We are running a promotion right now that gives you complete access for $1 per week. for 3 months just to get a sense of how valuable and original our content is. Just go to ibj.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.